Needs. Thank you for joining us for the National Symposium for Classical Education. Our Friday afternoon keynote is about to begin. As we finish our lunch break, we'd like to share with you this video of a recent visit by former Vice President Dan Quayle to Great Heart Veritas.
I came to Veritas to speak to the kindergartners and the fourth grade. I have a granddaughter in kindergarten. I have one in fourth grade. They go here because it's a great school. 5 of my 6 granddaughters have gone here. They get a very good education here. Look at that. They're all ready to learn about presidents and vice presidents and the Congress and the Supreme Court, ready to go.
Good morning, boys and girls. We have such a special treat. Today we have former Vice President Dan Quayle here to talk to you. I know some of you have been talking about this in class and even came up with some great questions. He is going to present. He came up with a presentation for you, so this is going to be just wonderful.
Good morning, girls and boys. Are you all ready to learn? We talked about government, talked about the presidency and the Congress, the Supreme Court. I'm going to get started. Here are the presidents. How many presidents have we had? 46. And who's the current president? Joe Biden. And who was the president that abolished slavery? See if how many of you can get this one. Who was the president when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union fell? George H.W. Bush. Very good, very close. He is right here. And I was his vice president. And I'm right here. I was the 44th vice president of the United States. I tried to teach them about the executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch. Talk to them about how many members of the Senate we have, how many members of the House of Representatives we had. They're going to go home and impress their parents. There are 3 branches of our government, all right? You have the executive branch, and who's in the executive branch? The president and the vice president, okay? And you have the Congress. And then in the Congress, you have the House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And then you have a Supreme Court right there. So you have, how many branches of government do we have? 3. And what are they? Executive, legislative, and judicial. And that's very important. You got a question? You want to do what? High five. Why don't we stop something? Okay. How many members are in the United States Congress? How many? Stand up and say what the number is. 435. Don't forget that. This is the U.S. House of Representatives, Congress. And a congressman is elected for 2 years. Tonight, when you go home, you can ask your parents, how many members of Congress are there? And see if they know. And don't forget the number. What's the number? 435. Showed them where I lived as vice president, where the president lived. You've been asking, where do I live? This is the Naval Observatory. It's run by the Navy, but it is the vice president's residence. It's not a bad place, is it? Right. And it's got about 40 acres there. This is the first floor, and then we would walk up the stairs, and that's where I lived. Now, how about that? This is in the White House, a bowling alley. So when you get a tour of the White House, you need to ask to see the bowling alley. It's really, really cool. Got time for a few questions. All right, here you go.
What's the most famous person in your contacts?
Most famous person in my contacts? Well, it's classified. Yeah.
Do you like cookies?
Cookies, yes, I like chocolate chip cookies.
Me too.
Yeah, you got a question?
What's your favorite thing about being a president?
Favorite thing about being vice president? Working with President Bush every day, working in that Oval Office, and it was a great honor for me to be working with the president, making decisions that impact the entire world. You got a question?
Did your son ever want to be a president or a vice president?
Well, I had a son. Their dad was in the Congress for a while, and so I thought that he might want to be president or vice president, but then he's out of Congress and he's working and he has really no interest now. Yeah. Do I have a bodyguard? Right here. These are the two bodyguards, and they're very, very good. My favorite question was,
What's your favorite letter?
my favorite letters, Q. Very good, you guys all passed. Very good, congratulations.
What do we say?
What's your favorite number?
Number 7.
7-Eleven's my birthday. Bye-bye.
It was a lot of fun, a great day, and I think they learned a lot.
Great to see Dan Quayle at the Veritas campus. My name is Dan Scoggin, and I'm the co-founder of Great Hearts Academies, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our last keynote speaker of the 2024 symposium. This is a real honor to introduce this wonderful leader in just a moment. But before I do that, I would like to thank our final keynote sponsor for the symposium, St. Constantine College. Great scholars have always thrived with individual mentorship. Just ask John Milton, C.S. Lewis, or Dorothy Sayers. That's why we only teach at this beautiful college in one-on-one tutorials in small group discussions. If you are looking for a deeply Christian college with rigorous academics, personalized instruction, and a close-knit campus community, you found it at St. Constantine College. And at only $10,500 per year, you can afford it too. That's an amazing price point for higher ed. So be a part of the revolution return to what college is meant to be. So our keynote speaker this evening, Dr. Toyin Atolagbe, is a dear friend and a mentor to many in this room. I see her colleagues here at a table over here from our schools, our Christian schools, the Great Hearts Christos Academies. And Dr. Atolagbe has been involved in the Great Hearts Network for 13 years. She holds a PhD from Grand Canyon University and a master's in education from the University of Lethbridge in Canada. And as I mentioned, she's currently involved with the Christos Schools as the founding executive director. She previously served as the headmaster of Great Hearts Archway Lincoln campus and was part of the founding faculty of Great Hearts Archway Arete and Archway Trivium, so she's been involved with 3 foundings of Great Hearts Schools. She's also the co-founder of Agape International Schools, a private Christian classical school providing free education to an underserved community in Nigeria. She has been in the education field for 20 years. But just one point about Toyin, or maybe a couple. She inspires so many of us because she not only brings her deep educational knowledge to education, but she brings her heart. She loves her colleagues and she loves students. She's also really, really good at what she does. Out of 1,350 public schools in the state of Arizona, in 2022 on the state exams, now classical education is much more than just teaching to exams, but out of 1,350 schools, Toyin's school was school number 1 in the entire state on academic results. She would never say anything about that because she's so focused on the kids in classical education, but she left that job, really being at the pinnacle of her craft as a Great Hearts headmaster, to take this wonderful leap of faith. And she would say it was faith inspired in the Lord to start the Christos schools. They're private Christian classical academies supported by ESA vouchers. So this is a new venture by Great Hearts. There are 2 schools. There's Great Hearts Christos in Gilbert and Great Hearts Christos in Phoenix. And the Phoenix School serves a significant number of low-income kids. So we're delighted to have Dr. Toyin Atolagbe to the stage. So please join me in welcoming her. Toyin.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's such an honor to be here today, giving this final keynote speech for the National Symposium. I like to start by saying that I have enjoyed hearing from all the keynote speakers and the educators leading all the workshops. And something that stood out for me with the keynote speakers is the emphasis that they placed on the role of faith in classical liberal arts education. That resonates with me because every day I ask myself, oh Lord, why are you so mindful of me? My entire life is a testimony of God's mercy, and the mercy that the people that God has surrounded me with, the mercy that they've extended to me. And so when I look back at my upbringing, I'm just so grateful for the love that people have extended to me. How did I end up with the best parents in the world who cultivated in me a heart of virtue? How did I end up with all of those wonderful teachers in my elementary education, but most importantly, my middle school and high school education at Federal Government Girls College, Benin City in Nigeria, where I spent 6 years in a boarding house learning from people who are not my parents. My parents would drop me off, and they were the ones who took charge of my life. They showed me a lot of mercy. They allowed me to fail, but they didn't leave me on the ground to languish. When I was in distress, there was always a teacher there to help me get up. And I share all of this because mercy matters. And so this afternoon, I just want to lead that charge that we've learned a lot in the last few days since Wednesday night about intellectual virtue, but let us go back to our base with mercy in our hearts for our children. Plato talks about the role of justice in a society, and he argues that in a society where the virtue of justice is exuded, the people in that society have to know their role in the society, and they have to do their part so that we can all live harmoniously in that society. Aristotle said that the goal of a human life is human flourishing. And so what I want to talk about this afternoon is that we all know that at the end of the day, we want our children to flourish. However, as a society, we have a role to play in that human flourishing. As a school community, we have a role to play in that flourishing. For those of you that have read The Abolition of Man, C.S. Lewis talks about the fact that we're raising men without chests. That bothers me. There's a battle against our endeavor to raise men and women with chests. The cultivation of the human mind and heart by educators is at loggerheads with modern-day influences, whether you know it or not. After those kids have spent 8 hours with you at school, some of them, not all of them, are going back to their homes in the corners of their bedrooms, just scrolling down social media to hear from the people that I refer to as modern-day influencers. They are desperate to promote materialism and ethical relativism to our children. Are we just going to sit and watch them take over our responsibility? I'm looking into all your eyes, and I can tell that the answer is no. You all don't look like people that will just sit and watch. I hope that we don't do that. Our children are growing during tough times, and the rapid technological advancements continue to be a source of distraction for them. Personally, I have come to the frightening conclusion that in all of this, our children are not to blame. They have been dealt a hard blow. We handed this culture over to them. They are not the creators of this culture. They need our help to navigate the roadmap of a culture that they inherited. And so when you look at the older generation and the younger generation, the older generation can understand why the younger ones can't get it right. And the younger ones are demoralized by the confusion of the older folks because the younger ones don't understand why we're upset. Like, can't you see what's going on around us? It's my mom who gave this to me. It's my uncle who gave this to me for my birthday. And I'm not here to blame parents. I'm a parent myself. My daughter has a phone where we're working our way through freedoms here and there as she gets older. But one thing I want you to know, from the lens of an administrator, I know that parents are intentionally seeking a safe space for their children. And that's why recently there is an influx of students from all over the place in our classical schools. Classical education is exploding around the country and the world. And that's a beautiful thing. The ultimate goal of education is for our children to gain wisdom. And Aristotle talks about wisdom in terms of theoretical and practical. And knowing that we have to instill wisdom in our children because they need it. King Solomon in the book of Proverbs said, "When wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasing to your soul, discretion will protect you." Do our children, do they have the knowledge? It says that understanding will guard you. Wisdom will protect you from darkness. Do our children have the wisdom it takes to navigate the roadmaps of their lives? That's the challenge we have as educators, instilling wisdom during the digital age. I want to dwell a bit on digital distractions. It's so sad that many of you didn't get to listen to Dr. Amber Dyer talk about navigating the digital age as classicists. It was a beautiful presentation, Dr. Dyer. I really enjoyed listening to you. To a large extent, we can all agree that technology is a good thing. Think about how you all got here, those of you that came from out of state, right? You came by air. Think about all your schools and the presence that you have on social media. When you're looking for teachers, you jump on social media, you put in an advert. When you need enrollment, you put in an advert. So technology is not necessarily a bad thing. However, I agree with General Omar Bradley that if we continue to develop our technology without wisdom or prudence, our servant may prove to be our executioner. With technology came the advent of social media. And I will even argue that social media did not start off as a bad thing. It was for connectivity, and we all need to connect with our friends and loved ones. Talk about connectivity gone wrong. How did something created for human connectivity degenerate into a state of commotion? We now have commercial interests that prioritize user engagement metrics, advertising, and the manipulation of algorithms. We now have the proliferation of clickbait, sensationalism, divisive content, misinformation, propaganda, and extreme ideologies driven by modern-day influencers. The constant notifications, pop-ups, likes, pings, shiny content. 7-year-old YouTube millionaire. Wow. In the quietness of many homes, social media influencers are manipulating and distorting the minds and hearts of our children. You all teach them to be good people, but when they go online, people tell them, what does it even mean to be good? That's non-existent. Nobody is good. You can't be good. We weren't created to be good. In a recent report published by Gallup and the Institute of Family Studies, the Gallup survey found over half of U.S. teens spend a minimum of 4 hours daily on social media. 4 hours daily on social media. YouTube and TikTok are the most popular. We now know that because of our children's presence on social media, we have a lot of mental health issues. In May of 2023, the U.S. Surgeon General issued a warning that we need to protect our children from social media because its adverse effect on their mental health. He described it as an urgent public issue. And so while we're working hard every day to instill virtue in our children, there is a new war that we have to fight on behalf of our children. Gone are those days that you show up at work, you go to your desk, you get ready for school, you go to your class, you teach, you work out. No, I don't think we can teach like that anymore. Our kids won't survive these times if we're not engaging with them. The data from CDC makes it clear that young people in the US are collectively experiencing a level of distress that calls on us to act. Children aged 12 to 17 years were more likely to have received some mental health treatment, including taking prescription medications, receiving counseling, therapy for mental health. Youth mental health has continued to worsen, with particularly stark increases in widespread reports of harmful experiences on girls in particular. Nearly 1 in 3 seriously considered attempting suicide, up nearly 60% from a decade ago. 1 in 5 experienced sexual violence in the past year, up 20% since 2017 when CDC started monitoring this measure. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for teens and young adults ages 10 to 14 and 20 to 34. Youth suicide rate rose 62% from 2007 to 2021. And so I can tell you that many people are aware of this problem. Once upon a time, I used to think I was Chicken Little, shouting all over the place that the sky is coming down. But when I read these reports, I'm realizing that, okay, there's awareness. People are talking about it. Professor Sheehan talked about it yesterday in her talk about what Jane Austen will tell Instagram girls. So there's awareness. You all have to be aware of this problem. In a bid to solve this problem, the Department of Education, the government, they're also mounting pressure on schools with standardized testing. Think about all the test taking that our kids engage in. And we're part of that because funding is tied to how well our students perform. And so that's additional pressure on the kids. And then came COVID. And so it's absolutely important for each and every one of us to pay attention to the emotional and psychological well-being of our children. When we talk about mercy in philosophy, there's a tendency for it to be about what we call juridical mercy, which largely has to do with there's a criminal, there's a judge, and the criminal is asking for leniency from the judge. That's not the mercy I'm talking about. I want to explore mercy from the hallowed hallways of our school, from the sacred grounds of our school. The essence of mercy lies in the tender extension of forgiveness and loving kindness. It embodies a profound expression of empathy, compassion, relentless goodwill, and a commitment to ensuring that our children survive these hard times. I'm a lover of Gen Z. I've given my daughter the title of my PA. PA, I need help with this. They're very, very proactive. You buy something and you need somebody to fix it up, call it Gen Z. They figure it out in like a minute. I'm fiddling with something, my daughter goes, hey mom, bring it. They're a very smart generation. However, when you look left, right, they are withering. They are falling apart one by one. And this is why I am advocating for mercy for our children. With everything you've learned in the last 3 days, the only thing left for you to take with you is mercy, compassion, empathy, relentless goodwill for our children. The word mercy derives from the medieval Latin word merced, which means price paid. It indicates that a person showing mercy is offering or paying a kind or benevolent gesture to another. Mercy is an expression of strength towards another human, rooted in loving kindness. When I explored philosophical perspectives about mercy, St. Augustine was one that I found very interesting. He never shied away from telling his story of mercy. St. Augustine's life is an embodiment of mercy. He was able to overcome the struggles of his life because he was surrounded by people that forgave him, that reached out and lifted him out of his predicament. He defines mercy as a kind of fellow feeling. I really like that term, fellow feeling in our hearts for the misery of another that compels us to come to his aid as much as we can. Another person I explored was Thomas Aquinas. He described mercy as the habit of mind, whereby we are moved to be compassionate to another's ills. The habit of mind. He doesn't stop there. He further stated that mercy is the heartfelt sympathy for another's distress, impelling us to succor him if we can. And so we're hearing from this great thinker, St. Augustine. He said, a fellow feeling, humane-heartedness towards another. Thomas Aquinas said it's a habit of the mind. You're thinking about it, and you're moved, your heart is moved to act, to provide support. Rousseau, in his seminal work, Émile, or on education, he asserted that compassion is the basis of all morality. He advocated that education should nurture the innate goodness of individuals and promote a deep sense of interconnectedness with others. We can't live our lives thinking it's all about us. Remember, we're part of a society. And as just human beings, we have to fulfill our role in that society. But I love how he explores the interconnectedness. I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, and my upbringing was shaped by a working knowledge of how I am connected to every human being I meet. We're all connected in one way, shape, or form. And what I need us to be thinking about is, if we do not do anything to rescue our children that are in distress, when we're old and retired, who are the police officers that you will call when there's an emergency? Who are the people that will teach your grandchildren? Who are the doctors that will heal you when you have an ailment? think about it deeply. We have a moral obligation to our children, and it has to be done with compassion. This is not the age that we look at our children and say, you're just such a problematic child. I don't know what to do with you. Figure it out. Speak to people. Ask for help. We do not have an option not to help our children as educators. And so apart from the philosophical perspective on mercy, I did explore religious perspectives. As a Christian, I'm very much aware about the role of mercy in my own life. And I've said it, who am I, O God, that you're mindful of me? When I think about my upbringing, I'm like, man, why does he love me so much? It wasn't easy, but his grace was always sufficient. In the Bible, mercy reflects compassion, forgiveness, and grace, and it's considered a foundational principle that underpins our Christian faith and conduct. We did see Jesus during his ministry. He walked the streets. He walked from corners to corners, seeking people out. And he met them with mercy. I did dig into the Islamic religion. The concept of mercy is deeply rooted in the teachings of the Quran, the Holy Quran. And the concept of mercy from them, just like the Christians, that it emanates from God Almighty, for them it emanates from Allah, the extremely merciful. Prophet Muhammad is reported to have said, "The merciful will be shown mercy by the most merciful. Be merciful to those on earth, and ones in heavens will have mercy upon you." So mercy, from the Islamic perspective, embodies a commitment to compassion, forgiveness, and benevolence. Hinduism. In Hinduism, the concept of mercy encompasses the broader framework of compassion, nonviolence, and the pursuit of spiritual growth. The notion of mercy is referred to as daya. And daya also reflects compassion, kindness, benevolence in the spiritual path and in your interaction with the other human being. The Buddhists, their principle of karuna, described as the quivering of the heart. I actually really liked that, the quivering of the heart. This term posits compassionate action and embodies a genuine desire to alleviate the suffering of others. The Buddhist scriptures, particularly the Pali Canon, advances the centrality of the karuna in the pursuit of the cultivation of a benevolent heart. I looked at Confucianism as well. In the context of Confucianism, the concept of mercy is often synonymous with benevolence and compassion. And it's articulated within the framework of Ren, in the Analects, which represents the central virtue of human-heartedness or benevolence in Confucian thoughts that causes an individual to flourish. And so, from philosophy to all religions, we are saying the same thing. Live your life keeping an eye on the people around you. And in this scenario, it's our children. In this scenario, is our principals and headmasters extending mercy to the teachers. It's the executive director and the executive team extending mercy to the headmasters. If we all will just stop, look around you and say, how can I be of help to you today? I really think the world will be a better place. Eric Boyle said, the vocation of teaching offers us the chance over and over again to let go of our power, control, and ownership in favor of making relationships, learning, and doing the works of charity. The teacher who is too strict risks alienating young people in the building, where they are increasingly spending more waking hours than their own home. But the teacher who uses mercy as an excuse to avoid confrontation or care lets students down through indifference. What does mercy sound, look like? I'll quickly run through what that is, but I'll also tell you what it is not, because there is a fine line. Mercy focuses on what the human can do and become. Simply put it, it empowers others to become better. Mercy elevates others above their current transgression or vulnerability. Open a new page for your children every day. The mistakes of today should not define their tomorrow. The mistakes of yesterday should not define the current situation of a child. Open a new chapter for them every single day. Mercy affirms the potential to be good despite our failures. Mercy is compassionate to those in distress, especially when it is within one's power to punish or bring them down. Mercy arises from a place of seeking the greater good of others and the restoration of relationships. Mercy incorporates excellence, compassionate discipline, accountability, and genuine human-heartedness in the well-being of others. Simply put, mercy is loving other people. My Christian faith taught me about love, and I'll share it with you. 1 Corinthians 13. It says that love is kind. Love is patient. It's not easily angered. It does not keep account of wrongdoing. Stop keeping account of their wrongdoings. Stop opening logs for your children. Open a new chapter for them every single day. Every day brings fresh opportunities for you to guide them to be their best version, the best version of themselves. Love protects. It endures. It hopes. That's mercy. Now, I want to talk about what mercy is not. Mercy isn't indulgent permissiveness that lowers the bars of excellence. Mercy isn't misguided empathy that indulges the recipient in a debilitating state of hopelessness. Immanuel Kant will tell you it's not sentimental, and that mercy should be guided by reason, not emotions. How would you assess if you have a culture of mercy on your campus? There is the pursuit of academic excellence and rigor, compassionate mentorship, healthy relationships. I remember when my son was at Arete Prep, the first few weeks of school, one of the things I loved to see was Robert Wagner just give the kids high fives as they were coming in. Healthy relationships. My daughter struggled for a while. It meant a lot to me to see Mrs. Attridge in front of that gate every day, just engaging with her in the mornings. That made me smile as I drive off to my workplace. There is an ethos of inclusivity in a culture that's rich with mercy. There's a culture of dialogue. When there's a problem, don't be quick to dole out a consequence. Let us engage. Why are we having this problem? We need to ask questions. We give opportunities for reflective pedagogical practices. In a culture rich with mercy, there is recognition of the inner dignity of every child. We create opportunities for restorative practices. There is careful watch over emotional and psychological well-being of the child. In a culture of mercy, there is absence of punitive disciplinary measure that lack restorative opportunities. And these are the questions I want you to ask yourself. What does the culture of mercy look like on your campus? Are you building those relationships? Are you sharing the thinking with the students? It's not every time a student creates a problem that you get to do the thinking alone. And I'll give you an example. In the case of Johnny, Johnny missed a science test. He wasn't in school that day. And Johnny knows that Ms. Johnson does not do makeup tests, except it's absolutely important. And Johnny goes to Mrs. Johnson to advocate for himself. And Ms. Johnson says, "So why did you miss the test?" Johnny says, "Well, I wasn't feeling well, and so my mom wanted me to stay at home." "Oh," Ms. Johnson goes, "I'm sorry to hear that. That's a good reason for me to extend you some grace." Now, Johnny says, "So when can I take the test? Can I take it during science class tomorrow?" Ms. Johnson says, no, there's no way I'm giving you a test while I'm supposed to be teaching. I need you to come to my room, come take the test during Lyceum. And Johnny goes, but Ms. Johnson, that's when I play basketball with my friends. And Ms. Johnson is like, "Johnny, really? Basketball with your friends? Which is more important? You making up for your tests or playing basketball?" And Johnny says, "Oh yeah, you're right. Making up for my test is more important." Ms. Johnson says, "Just so you know, Johnny, I would be able to administer the test at 11:20 tomorrow. I need you to be here at 11:20. If you're 1 minute late, it's going to cause a problem for my schedule." And Johnny goes, "Oh, I'm going to try to be there." Ms. Johnson says, "Johnny, just so you know, if you're 5, 10, 2 minutes late, we will have a problem. And when we have a problem, you will have to solve the problem." And Johnny says, "Oh, don't worry, I'm going to be there, Ms. Johnson, thank you." And the time comes, Ms. Johnson is at her door waiting for Johnny, 11:20, 11:21, and Johnny comes running, 11:30. And Ms. Johnson is like, "Johnny, what was the plan?" Oh my goodness. Honestly, I was keeping an eye on the time. I lost track of time, but I'm here. Ms. Johnson says, "Remember what I told you yesterday, that if you come late, you mess up my schedule. And so, I will let you take the test, but sadly, we now have just 15 minutes instead of 25 minutes. And so, Johnny starts to do his test. And out of 20 problems, he was able to get to just about 10 problems. And Ms. Johnson looks at Johnny and says, Johnny, you only got 10 problems done. And Johnny said, yeah, I didn't have enough time. Whose fault is that? Let's unpack what happened here. Well, you're right. I should have come at 11:20. In that instance, Ms. Johnson has extended more than enough mercy to Johnny. And accountability has to take its place so that Johnny can grow. And God helped Johnny that he gets 10 out of the 10 that he did so that he can get half of the score. And that's what mercy is, right? It maintains the dignity of the child while holding them accountable for their actions. And so the next day, Ms. Johnson pulls Johnny out of the class and says, hey, I'm done grading your tests, 10. And Johnny goes, oh my goodness, I literally could have got everything right if I had done 20 questions. And Ms. Johnson goes, I'm glad you figured that out quickly. What are you learning from this experience? Oh yeah, my mom already told me, and we had this conversation, that I should have been there at 11:20. Very good. All right, all the best. That's mercy, right there. And so the framework that I'm proposing for mercy is that there has to be purpose. There has to be passionate intent. I think of Socrates. Socrates did not wait for the youth of Greece to come find him in his home. He went seeking them out. Seek out your students. When they're playing basketball, hang out with them. Check in with them. How are you doing today, Paul? You weren't answering questions in my class this morning. Are you okay? Ask questions. Socrates' emphasis on seeking truth through dialogue and reason rather than judgment and condemnation is an act of mercy. Jesus sought out the people in need. And even when they transgressed, the adulterous woman, whom they were going to stone to death, Jesus did not bend down and pick the largest stone and okay, you without sin, cast the first stone. If you haven't been a middle schooler before, then judge your students. I've been a middle schooler before. I didn't make poor choices. That's what school is for, a safe space to mess up. And that's where we come in, right? To provide that support for them. So it's always driven by passionate intent. There's always a purpose. You must have an action plan, and it must include a balanced approach filled with empathy and accountability. The goal of your actionable plan is always for the cultivation of virtue. Johnny learned from that experience. However, Ms. Johnson was kind to him. The third thing is a visible outcome. So there's purpose, there's action plan, there's visible outcome. And it must include personal responsibility, which is what Johnny had to own in this instance. There's restoration, there's transformation, there's opportunity for growth in this framework. As I conclude today, I want to admit that the work of educators, it's not an easy job. And I know it because people aren't going into that profession anymore. There's a shortage of teachers. And so I thank you all for your yes. Thank you. I advocate for mercy because I truly believe that children need caregivers that will love on them. Caregivers that will extend relentless goodwill towards no child is irredeemable. Every child is capable if they have the right support. And we cannot get tired of providing this support for them. In education, mercy cannot merely be a passive act of pity or shallow sympathy. It must embody a profound ethos of excellence, discipline, and accountability. It must be rooted in the belief that every human being is endowed with intrinsic dignity, regardless of their flaws. My favorite reflection on mercy from Thomas Aquinas is that mercy consists in bringing a thing out of non-being to being. That's the beautiful work we get to do. I love Shakespeare's poem from the Merchant of Venice. And I won't read everything because it's really long, but I'll read some part of it, right? He says that the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. And I'll stop there for a while because that's so powerful. There is a blessing for you all when you show mercy. You know, the Bible says that blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. If you want mercy in your life, show mercy. Form a habit of showing mercy. I'll tell you a quick story of mercy that my father told me. In Nigeria, there are three main ethnic groups. We have the northern, we have the southwest, and the southeast. My dad, we are from the southwest. My mom is from the southeast. And my dad was working in the southeast. I wasn't nearly born at this time. And the Civil War broke out in Nigeria. And so my dad, being from the southwest, had to travel quickly from the southeast because the southeasterners were killing the southwesterners. And so my dad said he just thought this whole cry about war wasn't serious. So he didn't move when everybody else moved. But when they started killing people, he tried to find his way back with a group of people. He said, Toyin, we were about an hour away from crossing the border of southwest region where we were going to, when these Biafran soldiers, who are southeasterners, came out of nowhere and just waylaid them and abducted them. And that throughout in the back of that huge truck, they were rejoicing. We caught the southwesterners. We're going to kill them. We're going to skin them alive. We're going to roast them. And my dad said in that moment, he started praying that, oh my goodness, my family, my wife, my two sons. And so they got to a part, they were taken into the jungle. My dad said, it was just terrifying. And he said it was about 30 of them. They were going in the bushes. And when they got to a place, they were all blindfolded. My dad said, they started talking, okay, so what are we going to do with these people? And the leader said, just kill all of them, count them, just add them so that we can report that we just killed 30 people. And my dad, knowing my dad very well, my dad will save himself with his mouth. My dad said, I have something to say before you kill me. And this is a true life story, I'm not joking. And my dad said the moment he spoke, one of the generals of the Biafran army stopped and said, bring that man who just spoke. And my dad came forward. He said, remove his blindfold. And the moment his blindfold was removed, The Army General in Nigeria, when we see an adult older than us, we acknowledge them by genuflecting. It's a sign of respect. And the person said, "Senior Festus? Oh my goodness." And he bowed, genuflected to honor my father. And he told his soldiers, "Remove all the blindfolds, everybody, give them water. This man, he's a good man." He was my senior in high school. He was a very good man. He looked out for the junior students. He taught us how to play soccer. My dad said he couldn't believe his eyes. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. You do not know how far these children will go. What will the kids say about you when they come in contact with you during their life's journey? Will they describe you as a merciful teacher or a mean teacher? Think about it. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. There's a blessing in it for you if you're merciful to your students. The transformative power of mercy has the potential to heal wounded souls, inspire resilience, and kindle a spirit of hope within the hearts of all who suck at its bosom. As I bid you all farewell, I want to leave you with these affirmations. May all our pursuit of academic excellence be inseparable from our commitment to fostering a culture of mercy. May our educational institutions be beacons of compassion and grace as we pursue wisdom and transformative love. May mercy lead us to recognize the inherent dignity in every child. May mercy lead us all to a place of victory where the fruits of our service to humanity translates to raising a new generation of leaders who will in turn impact the next generation and achieve their greatest goal of human flourishing. Thank you.
That was amazing. Would you stay and do some questions with us?
Of course, okay. Of course.
Well, friends, start lining up for questions if you have one for Dr. Atolagbe.
Thank you.
And Toyin, I brought you a water.
Thank you. That's kind of you.
That was amazing, Toyin, and I know my heart needed those remarks. We sometimes get so focused on outcomes and academic excellence, but we lose the focus. I was going to ask a question, but I don't think I need to because we have some eager participants. So thank you so much. So please.
Thank you, Toyin. You did a great job.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I just have a simple question that you did touch on, but as you said, mercy can be misunderstood.
That's right.
And it can be said that it's mercy and then it becomes something else. So would you say that there can be mercy without justice? And what is the relationship between the two?
I'm trying to, okay. I mean, they both go hand in hand, right? When I look at justice, in your bid to give to everyone what they are deserving of, I think it needs to be meted out with compassion. So they go hand in hand. I was very tactful not to dwell on justice because I feel like philosophically, that's what you all want to hear, right? But that's not what I want to communicate. And so justice creates law and order, but mercy allows us to hold people accountable with compassion in our hearts. So I'll say both of them go hand in hand. I just did not want to give justice a lot of credence because I was laser focused. What I want you all to leave here with is that word mercy, because it's such a powerful word, but it's underrated. You know, even in my research, justice kept coming up, and as justice was coming up, I kept telling justice, you're not the one I'm looking for. Mercy is who I'm looking for. So I knew this question was going to come up, for sure, yeah. But they go hand in hand, you know. Plato actually talks about compassion. He doesn't talk about mercy, but he talks about meting out justice with compassion.
We don't feel too bad for justice.
Sorry, thank you for your beautiful oration. I really enjoyed hearing that.
Sure.
My question is similar to the last one. I was thinking about mercy in relation to charity, which you also mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see mercy as separate and distinct from charity, or in your speech, did you mean them synonymously? If those are separate, do they have a separate good? Is mercy a preparation for charity, or does mercy have a distinct good of its own that's distinct from charity?
They're not separate from each other, you know. When you look at the Catholics, their corporal works of mercy requires charity work. And what that tells me, I actually went to Catholic schools. One of the things that I loved about the corporal works of mercy, which required us to do works of charity, is that it keeps us in that state of being merciful towards the other. And what that means is that we see that there's a need and we act towards it.
So is mercy more an inner orientation, charity more the action resulting, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your talk. It seems like one of the most merciful things we could do, particularly for this generation, is to give them hope and joy.
That's right.
And I think you're a beautiful spokesperson for that. So I think in general, it would be good to get some insights on how you share that just so naturally. And then two, you know, I personally find hope in this idea of an everlasting soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I would also argue that seems like a very classical thought that we should be able to share naturally as well, even from like a natural law perspective. But we're in a secular, post-Christian world. Like maybe some ideas of how you give that to young people without crossing those lines.
That's right. And honestly, I am so grateful that I get to work for Christos now, because when I'm instilling moral and spiritual virtue in my children, I do not hold back, because I do not have anything preventing me from doing that. But one thing I can tell you is that even when I was in the public school, I was still able to instill moral and spiritual virtue in my children, because as a Christian, as a person of faith, my dad always told me that, Toyin, I don't want to hear about your faith. Leave it. So I grew up in a home where I was encouraged to leave my faith more than speak my faith. And so when I worked with the public charter school, it was very easy for me because I just lived my faith. Children are attracted to something that's beautiful. Children, they see truth, right? And so I went about my way. Those who knew me, first thing in the morning, I was out there saying hello, joyfully, starting my day with a lot of excitement. And the kids see that. They mirror the behavior of their caregivers. And so for me, I'll just say to you that whether you're in public or you're in private Christian, live your faith and whatever you believe in. Model it. Be an example. Do not worry about speaking it. Show them how to be merciful, and they will be merciful. Act out like you have hope and you are not one that is hopeless, and they'll see it and they'll mimic it. And I think it's really about the doing more than saying that matters in this case. And I hope that's helpful.
Hi, Toyin.
Hi, Sam.
You know how much I admire you, and I want to thank you first for what you shared, and so much of what we've heard this whole symposium is countercultural. And right now we're living through a time where the culture is permissive.
That's right.
And if we're not being permissive, then we're being unloving and unkind. And it's easy to feel hopeless in the face of that because it feels like we're the minority in that culture. So what encouragement can we take away to help fight that feeling of hopelessness when it's easy to fight that when we're all together like this, but that's not our everyday.
I want to start by saying that you think about the future. Think about what's going to happen 10, 20 years from now if we do not destroy the shackles of hopelessness. Right? Who will be the leaders of tomorrow? There's nothing virtuous about a feeling of hopelessness. We must persevere. We must keep fighting courageously. There is absolutely nothing to be hopeless for. Because when you have life and you wake up every day, you get to do it again, you just keep going. There's nothing to be hopeless about, I tell you. All you need is courage. And courage is boldness to do it over and over again while staying on it with fortitude until you achieve that goal. So think about the future. What's going to happen in the future, right? And these kids they're crying. They're crying for accountability. Dr. Dyer shared something during her presentation that stood out for me. She said, I was known as that professor that did not indulge them in technology. They weren't allowed to. Imagine college students not being allowed to bring their phones into the classroom. She said, but at the end, when they do their evaluations, they talked about the 1 hour with Dr. Dyer being the most human 1 hour of their day. Why is that? She did not live in hopelessness. In fact, when you said that, Dr. Dyer, I said to myself, can I even have the courage to tell students who are like adults, 20, 23, you can't bring your cell phone into the classroom? She did it with courage. That's what we need, Sam. I'm telling you, there's nothing to be afraid of. Let us borrow a leaf from Socrates. When he was going to be sent, you know what? He was laughing at them when they were going to sentence Socrates that, guess what? My job here is done. I'm going to a better place. There is nothing to be hopeless or afraid of. With courage, fight for your convictions. Hold them accountable. Set boundaries for them. Hold them accountable. But do it with a loving heart. Do it with patience, with kindness. Open a new chapter for them every day. Don't keep account of their wrongs, because if you do, it leads to a state of hopelessness. Reap the page of yesterday and open a new page of tomorrow. There is nothing to be hopeless about. Courage is what you need, like Dr. Dyer, telling 20-year-olds, do not bring your phone into my classroom, because she knows that she has a purpose, a passionate intent to instill virtue in them. There's nothing to be hopeless about. Whenever you're hopeless, Sam, call me. Please do.
Amen. That's great.
Dr. Atolagbe, thank you very much for your words on mercy. Very inspiring. During the course of your talk, you mentioned your daughter, and there was a moment where you're having trouble with some technology, and she sprang into action and took care of it. And that struck me. In the past few answers, you mentioned that children crave a model and accountability, and I'm wondering if you could just speak to what are the basic desires of a child's heart? What are they craving? What do they look for from us as adults?
Before I answer that question, I want to tell a story about this man, Mr. Lerner. Mr. Lerner is a teacher at my daughter's school, and I love him so much. Your name comes up in my home all the time. And my daughter told me once that she was listening to music, she had her earpods in her ears and forgot to remove it before going into school. And this great man here came to her by her locker, went on one knee down, and looked at her eyeball to eyeball and said, "Tommy, did you mean to bring your AirPods to school today?" I said, "He did that?" She said, "Yes, I was terrified." And I said, No, Mr. Lerner, I did not, and I removed it. And I said, "That's such a great, you mean he actually went on one knee?" "Yeah," she said, "because I was by my locker, and he kind of went." That's mercy right there, right? What are our children craving? It's what you just did, right? You could have stood, look at how tall this man is. You could have gone in her face and said, "How dare you bring your AirPods to school? Do you not know it's against the school?" But instead, dialogue. Did you mean to come? Oh, no. That's what our children, that's what their hearts are craving for. You know, the classists, we know that they were obsessed with studying human nature. And what we learn from the classists is that no child is born good or bad, right? When they come into the world, they come into an environment and they're surrounded by people. And those are the people that influence, right? And so for me, I think the heart of every child is pure. And what they are craving are caregivers who will love them and instill in them a love of virtue. And I think that's one thing I commend Great Hearts for. You all are doing a beautiful job, right? We're doing a great job in defining what's good, what's bad, through literature, the study of history, and everything else that we're doing. And that's what their heart is craving for. That loving guidance in pursuit of virtue is what their hearts are looking for. Thank you.
We have time for one more question because the clock is not merciful here. It says we need to go on to our other session. So, Reggie, please.
First, I want to thank you for sharing your heart with us. I really feel it. I have a two-part question, really.
Keep it tight.
Do we inculcate mercy, and if so, is it more important to educate the reason or will?
I would rather say that we model mercy. Because for me, as a Christian, I'm often reading the gospel I read the gospel according to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I've read it like 1,000,000 times. And what I am constantly looking for is how Jesus exudes mercy in his ministry. I think it has to be modeled. And that's why I'm looking at the teachers here and saying that if you do it long enough, your children will see and emulate that in you. I mean, I look at my children and I feel like there's never been a time that I sat down to teach Mercy 101 to my children. It's the experiences that the day brings that allows me to instill mercy or model mercy to my children. And so I will say it can be inculcated in the child through modeling, not necessarily teaching Mercy 101. Kids don't respond to things like that. Opportunities of examples of people doing works of mercy is definitely a good way to instill that.
Thank you, Dr. Atolagbe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. This is the last chance we have all to be together in the same room. So I wanted to take one more opportunity